the lands of the dawn, 21 million souls by the blessings of the gods. But the end seems inevitable, as the protectors of Aura turn on one another. No hero could be found for your village when Skysos came. You saw with your own eyes the slaughter of those you loved. You started from little when you sought training for your vengeance. Weapons, skills, knowledge, the forbidden power of magic, gold, trade, the business that is the beating heart of Aura, diplomacy, and of course, entreating the power from beyond. But eventually it was time. The friends you made, the allies, the followers, they would have followed you into the maw of Iskara. You formed an army. You inspired loyalty. They saw in you the dream of rebuilding the world. And finally, your moment came. All of your training, all of your money and power, every follower, every sword, vengeance, justice, courage, the armies of law and chaos collide. And you at a crucial moment, your blade on the sorcerer's throat. But what after? Will your heart be content? Will you find peace? Or will a wicked queen sit on the vacant throne? It's your choice in the end. Hey everyone, it's Ross from Mythic Mountains Folk Tabletop Club. Today I'm going to try to do something completely different. I just got a really big box in the mail, and I don't know, I think I know what's in it, but I'm not exactly sure. So I was so excited, I wanted to share this on camera and have us discover this together. I don't have a script or anything for this. I'm going to try an unboxing video. So here we go. You're going to hear some noise. This thing is chunky. Here we go. I'm going to try to lift this thing over here. Here we go. Oh, boy. Oh, my gosh. Oh, I'm going to throw my back out. Oh, man, look at that thing. Okay, it's taking up the whole frame. So I can't even get it all in here. This thing is huge, and it's full of something. This thing is heavy. So here we go. It says it came from Studio 2 Publishing. So let's see about that. Here we go. Oh, man. I bet I know what it is. And then when we get into it, I'll be able to zoom out because I don't have this giant box. We'll be able to talk about it. So here we go. Let's take the packing cover off. Okay, there's boxes in the boxes. Psych. You can already see what it is. Oh boy, y'all. Huge, chunky, amazing Adventure Conqueror King books. Look at these things. Gorgeous. We're going to take a look at all these. I'm going to take them out here. We're not even done yet with whatever was sent. I'll take that crazy noise out for you all so you don't have to hear that. There's a second box here. So why don't we take a look at that and see what it is. Look at this giant box full of RPG stuff. Get that out of the way. All right. All right, let me put that into the frame a little bit so you can see. Opening a final box here. Oh boy. Look at that. This thing, this is gorgeous. Let me lower it so you can see it. Wow. A gorgeous wooden slipcase. And we're going to get to the slipcase in a minute. As beautiful as it is, I'm more interested. I'm going to start with the things that are probably going to be less important for me right away. this faux leather is what it feels like anyway. Judge's screen. I'm going to keep the plastic wrapping to the side because I'm going to probably keep it in that. And you can slip papers and cases in here. There it is. Okay, we're going to put that in the next to the slipcase. And then we have the inserts that are supposed to go with it. All right. These books are huge and they feel amazing. It's also a kind of faux leather. These things are like hard to even lift with one hand. They're gorgeous. All right. Let's do the flip through and let's talk about it. The actual rule book. This is what I got. The Adventure Conqueror King, Imperial Imprint, or aka Acts 2. Now, a couple things about this that I want to mention up front. So first of all, I have only ever gotten to play this game one time, okay, to be honest with you. And even then, it was only, it had some elements of Acts 2 in it, but for the most part was actually Acts 1. So that's just a confession up front. This is just like an unboxing, and I was excited. I wanted to share also how beautiful this product was because I knew that was going to happen. This is probably the most beautiful role-playing game rule set I've ever purchased. The second thing I want to mention here is the artwork. So, let me see if I recognize anybody. No. Cover art. Jessica Fellauer, the leather cover. Michael Sirigos. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing these names. Michael Sirigos as well. Ryan Browning, RPG artist. I've seen that name before. I won't mention all of these, okay, but we've got a bunch, right? Cogda Demiralp, Francesca Ingracia, William Levy, Jeremy McCann. Skipping ahead here. I'm sorry to even skip any of these names. I'm excited to see some of this artwork. But I want to note some of the elements in the book, according to the designer, are artificial intelligence. So I did want to note that. However, it has a massive amount of human-made art as well. So it contains both. Looking at it, I don't see the artist's stamps. So I don't know which ones are AI art and which ones are not. That is kept a mystery for me. Maybe you'll be able to tell. I don't know. But no polemic, no opinions. I just wanted to note that. Because we're going to keep going, and the reason I wanted to mention that primarily is because I'm going to reach artwork and it'll be like, interesting. They went with this time. I'm going to talk about the artwork. Okay, so here we go. I want to start with just the page count of this one book. This is the rule book, okay? This thing is 548 pages. We're looking at a role-playing game system that is seeking to be comprehensive. This is supposed to cover everything you need for an adventure game. That's what this is supposed to be famous for. Of course, you might say it's a good BX or BECME paraclone just in its own right. And you'd be well served just to use it for that reason. You might also say Adventurer, Conqueror, King. Similar to the formula of BECME, this is a Dungeons and Dragons variant that takes you from being an adventurer to leading armies to managing whole kingdoms in a war. And so you could say that's what this is. And then a third thing, and it's at least wrong, I'd say, from what I've experienced of the game so far, to reduce it to this. But something I think a lot of people are really excited about is how utterly thorough this game is, especially the resources, like in the Judge's Journal we're going to get to in a second. There are tools and systems for almost everything you can imagine. And that's the philosophy of this game. It is comprehensive. That may be an understatement. So, from adventurers, conquerors to kings, it has an implied setting, which I think is one of its undersold qualities, as well, is that it has this kind of Roman sword and sandal almost setting to it, which is really cool, really fascinating. And it is an interesting take also on the Poole Anderson kind of conflict between law and chaos. And that is very cool. Characters. Now, it takes a kind of a variant of what we know from Dungeons and Dragons, particularly old school Dungeons and Dragons. And what you have is a form of basic and expert, or like BECME, that really completes that formula. And just to put it honestly and bluntly, that's what it does. It takes that and it says, let's move it forward. And this is an example of what I would call a modern adventure game, of which there are very few. And so it's really special in that way. It finishes the design, it moves it forward, and this is a new game. What do I mean by that? Well, like Basic and Expert or BECME D&D, you don't have some giant list of skills and feats and abilities and buttons to push. It's not a modern version of Dungeons and Dragons. However, your character is complete. They have proficiencies. They're fleshed out. I wonder if I can go to the back and see a character sheet example, and you'll see what I'm talking about. This is not a simple game, or at least it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to stop at being a simple game. You can have a fleshed out character that works in the setting. And this is something I talk a lot about, the difference between character-facing features of a game and world-facing features of a game. And just like classic role-playing games, all of these things like proficiencies tie into the world and to the other aspects of the game that actually work for the game master. And you don't have to try to improvise or come up with, how can I make this person feel special, or how can I make this ability actually plug into the game, or do I need to moderate this ability in some way? That's not really a thing. But there's plenty of things to define your character and to bring them into this world. Core classes, the fighter, explorer, and this is fun, that there are these new and alternate classes, the thief, the mage. When I played it, I did not play a magic user, so I'm going to be honest, this is an example where I don't fully understand the magic system yet. However, I was intrigued by it as an enjoyer of the fiction as the game was ran. I really enjoyed it just playing out in the game as just a knucklehead fighter that got to observe it. The Crusader. I think, let's see here. This would suffice, in my opinion, also, though, honestly, as a variant to modern Dungeons and Dragons, as a modern adventure game in a similar way maybe Castles and Crusades would. You do start with features for your characters. This is something for people to get really serious about a campaign in. Not that you can't get serious in something more minimalist like Shadowdark, but this is something that could really fill the role of modern Dungeons and Dragons if people want to have class features. And it's not a game where you're meant to just languish forever, getting gold. And you'll see that here later. the Bard. I think we're getting into, campaign classes. So it gets into these kind of optional classes. I found these to be really interesting and flavorful when I was looking at just the PDFs of it. Let's see, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here from the classes, although I do find them really flavorful and interesting. Racist class, y'all. It's back, sort of. I think here we have, although I think it also has variant rules for this, but demi-human classes. Dwarven Craft Priest. Dwarven Vault Guard. You're not just going to be a dwarf. You're not going to just be a dwarven crusader. No. This is tied to the fiction. This stuff is fiction-facing, world-facing. It's tied into the implied setting. The Nobiran Wonderworker. This is just so flavorful. And then this is something where, in my experience when I was playing the game, the characters got really crunchy and really detailed, and there were lots of options. And this stuff has been balanced over a very long time. This game has, in some form or another, been out and been played by many and play tested for so long. These proficiencies work, and they're more like they're going to give you something meaningful in terms of a mechanic, but. A lot of these are also, they may tie into the system as it grows into that greater scale as time goes on. I had a feature where like a training manual, and I was a man at arms, and I was actually able to train warriors, and I could earn money by doing that. I could also build connections, and in theory, it would become more and more important as time went on. Because the game might become about leading groups of warriors into battle. Let's see here. This is fun to me. 3 different types of flags as basic adventuring equipment: pennant, banner, and standard, all various sizes and prices. A prosthesis. This game doesn't shy away from sword and sorcery content. That's one thing about, and I think we'll see some of that later on in the advice. This is, even though it's kind of sword and sandals, like this Roman era, you're going to have slavery and sex, and of course you don't have to do that, but it's part of the implied setting is something that is gritty. So I'm going to skip ahead. I'm going to tell you what I imagine I would use this for. First of all, we're going to be talking about what I'm most excited about, which is this here in a second. But we're playing a lot of games. Am I going to switch from original D&D to Axe? I don't think so. Probably not. Am I going to play Axe other than I don't know. I would love for the chance to, if I had the time, to join another game and play Axe. I would be thrilled to get to do that. This looks like a really challenging game to run if you try to do all of it and do it in its ambitious form. And you know that I love that sort of gaming that is ambitious and takes itself seriously and tries to do something really special. But more than likely, what I could see this being used for is I am of the opinion that Advanced Dungeons and Dragons is a complete game, a complete fantasy adventure game. I would usually use that instead of this for a big, comprehensive adventure game. However, I would probably use Advanced Dungeons and Dragons for a more vertical, high fantasy story where by the end, you have people riding a Pegasus and using a flaming sword, +2, and fighting a Titan. And not that you couldn't do that in this game, but what I would really see myself loving this game for, if the opportunity ever arose, is a more lateral game. And I love Classic Traveler. I love lateral advancement. I almost honestly prefer it over vertical advancement and big powers and epic heroes and high fantasy and things. Again, not that this can't do epic heroes and high fantasy, but that the progression of the game goes from adventure and eventually there's more and more systems where you're going to expand laterally, I think is an exciting campaign concept for a Dungeons and Dragons campaign that could be more grounded, that already has in its sights, like, there are problems in this world and you're not going to solve them by flying a Pegasus and having epic, a helm of radiance. You're going to solve it by forming an army and alliances and politics and intrigue, and even manipulating markets and thieves guilds. And we'll look at that in a second. But that's such an exciting campaign concept. And that's what I could see using this stuff for. As I said, I'm going to be honest, I'm not that familiar with the magic. So I'm not going to go over it. Evasion rules. I wonder if there's here, character death. Now, this is interesting. The author of this book, Alex Macrease, he has another book called Arbiter of Worlds. And I just highly recommend it. I think it's one of the great masterpieces of role-playing game advice. He also has a video series where you can see all those concepts for free on YouTube. In fact, I'll include them in the description. In those videos, he has a thing on character death, and his game, Adventure Conqueror King, solves this problem. And I think it's worth just summarizing here. I won't read this. This is the problem of character death. In modern role-playing games, character death is mitigated mechanically. So in 5th edition, you have a bunch of saving throws, and if you save one of 3 saving throws, you're good to go and you pop back up. I call it whack-a-mole because that's what it felt like, especially with barbarians. Someone casts Healing Word, you pop back up. You have to go like 50 points or 50% of your points or something below 0 to actually automatically die. I found it nearly impossible to die in 5e, and everyone knows that cares about these games seriously, that to not have the real risk of consequences removes the gravitas, removes how the game feels meaningful. And for me, these role-playing games can feel incredibly meaningful, but to have no risk of death takes that away. On the opposite end, you have the progenitor of this game, which is basic and expert D&D, and the many myriad versions from Knave to Cairn to whatever, Shadow Dark, that all split off from that. And in those games, you just die. You just die a lot. It's really easy to die, and likewise, it can make it feel meaningless. It can almost become a grim, humorous aspect to the game, like Dungeon Crawl Classics, where people joke about death almost as if it's like a death fetish. Now, that's fun. I do prefer that over the previous thing I mentioned. But are those our only 2 options? And Axe solves that. And it did along what it does, and his theory on death is, I think he nails it. What happens is the player has more to lose from death than the epic heroic character that that is their avatar. The hero, the character that they have, has an afterlife, believes in the gods, has a cause worth dying for. But in a role-playing game where the character is the most interesting part, and you've put the most effort in, for that character to die means you lose the most interesting part. And so what he does is he says, let's change that. Let's align the player's experience with the character's experience. And so death is a real possibility in Axe. In fact, I had a character die, but there's an afterlife, and there's an investment. There's an impact on the future. And so not all is lost. You have a reserve XP fund. You have funerals. You can have the inheritance of a new character. You can have things that will impact the world, the future, and the gods in the afterlife. And that is much more in line with what a heroic mythical character would be experiencing. So it just solves that problem elegantly. This would be exciting to have like a really gritty, in-depth game, a nautical game. Boy, that would be fun. Look at this huge section on naval stuff. And then you start getting into the Conqueror and King stuff. Now, this summarizes a lot of stuff that, existed in adventure games like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, in that kind of modern formatting that is very easy on the eyes, very easy to read, very easy to use, very easy to find. I could see this being an excellent reference, even if you're not using Adventure or Conqueror King. And there's just a ton of this stuff. The hijinks, you can send hirelings out on things. And these aren't just like ideas and principles and suggestions. This isn't just like wishy-washy, flim-flam. Here's some things. Now, good luck. You need to figure out on your own. This gets down to, here's a table. Here's a mechanic. Here's what you need to do. And look, if you're a dungeon master or a judge, game master, referee, whatever, that's what you need. You don't need somebody telling you how to have an imagination. If you do, then I think there's a different way to go about it than have a book just that tells you to have an imagination. I think you need to read Appendix N if you need an imagination, or just experience life or go on a trip somewhere. That's how you get an imagination, not a role-playing game book where it's dictated to you by a role-playing game company that also lacks imagination. You probably know who I'm talking about. But anyways, all of the stuff, all of the downtime things, and we've found, as you know, in Otherworld, that downtime is it is really what makes the campaign breathe and work, is taking time seriously. I've come to call it treating the world like a real place, like doing that. If done consistently on the bedrock of a reliable rule set, where there is a consistency and a reliability to it, it allows that vaunted goal that people claim they have, which is agency. That's player choice, and really meaningful choice that could be long lasting. I could see this being a game that is meant to, if you have like a group of tight-knit friends that are also serious, like you have friends that are also really serious about RPGs, and you're going to be playing a fantasy adventure game for a long time. I could see this being the carriage that carried that game for a very, very long time. I kind of skip ahead because I want to look at the other books too. Magical item creation, just tons and tons and tons of layers of stuff that you'd expect. Again, sort of reminds me of the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide, in how thorough it is, how much it models a world, and it gives the systems for a dungeon master to do that. In this case, they call it the judge, which actually I love. This is an implied setting with races and everything. I think the implied setting is really neat. Wounds and Woe. I went through this when my character died. It's worth it. It doesn't slow the game down. It's just, it does not slow the game down to get to this chart if your character is going to die, and then you get something really interesting. I think I lost my limbs and then bled out and then went into the afterlife anyway, and then we went through that and then had a funeral. It was really neat. Wow. Okay, look, we're just going to flip through this, but I think you have to. I think the monsters, this is key to a role-playing game. If this is messed up, then it's a bad indication for the game. That's creepy. Anyways, let's see here. Okay, it tells you about it like in an old school game. Like here's the actual how the stat blocks work. I'm wondering, I'll skip around to a few of these, but I'm wondering if it has what I think it needs to have. Interesting artwork. I don't know how I feel about the color artwork. You know, I kind of like the old school stuff. But it again, in that way, this could be a perfect, just, it'll work just perfectly for modern Dungeons and Dragons if that's what a group wants. It's fleshed out. Again, in that way, it kind of reminds me of something like Castles and Crusades, a thoroughly fleshed out game. All right. There are some classics. And I suppose one thing I'll note right up front is, look, there's just page after page after page, and these are just monsters. They're just they're monsters. Now I'm gonna pick a couple at random, and I'm gonna find the thing I'm looking for in a monster manual. So here we go. Let's start with the Spectre description. It gives a kind of a battle tactic list. I actually think that's really good. Let me pick something more basic. I need something really basic for this to work. Not Minotaur. A pirate. Okay. So we can see that the format seems to be the same here for most of these. That'll have this description, and then it has this combat section and an ecology section. This is sort of what I'm looking for. And what I was going to say is that what I look for is, don't just give me a stat block like an old school Renaissance game does with one sentence. I can work with that. I can make a monster act in an interesting way, especially, you're doing a reaction roll. And you're doing those other procedures. But what I would really like to see is, like, it's immune to this. It'll always do this. It ambushes on this. Some old school monsters do that. Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, good for it. So here we go. This is just a pirate. Okay, so let's see what it can do. +1 to AC and light armor. Skilled warriors +1 damage. Rowers. Okay, this is all kind of like narrative stuff. That can almost kind of go up there. Marines be equipped with short bows, grappling hooks, 50-foot ropes. That could all go down there. I don't really need to know. You can just put that somewhere. Unfortunately, I don't see it. Yeah, the equipment, I don't like deviating from old school in this way. They ought to just have the rewards of their equipment if the judge wants to provide them in the stat block. I don't want to have to go through here and get a highlighter out and figure out what they have. I don't like that. I don't feel like that part is useful. Of course, I know whether or not a reaction roll will tell me if they're going to attack or not. It's kind of pointing back to the fiction about buccaneers or this type of pirate or that type of pirate. That's something, I don't know. I have apophenia for that. That's my job. Suitable target, pirates will approach under. Okay. So combat so far has actually not really told me anything about unique mechanical aspects of the monster. So I don't like that so far. Ecology. Let's see here. Well, now this I think is important to the style of game this is. Again, something that I think is really special about this game is tons of this stuff is about the world, about the implied setting. This is world facing. This might be considered somewhat superfluous in a different modern role-playing game, but in this game, actually saying this is how they would appear. I like this. This says roll D10 on a 1 through 5. The pirates are outrating. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Mechanics, numbers, procedures. I can come up with the creative stuff. Apophenia. That's my job. But that's what I'm talking about. Now let me take one more. I'm going to pick something really basic. I'm going to just flip like way over here. Real basic. So far I'm getting a donkey. Donkey. All right, let's look at the donkey. Man, I got a whole page for a donkey too. They're important beasts, okay? Regal and crucial to economics, which I suppose is important in this game. So this is all right. We got a lot of abilities here. Sure-footedness. All right, combat section. No, we're getting the fiction here. And not really a lot of mechanical stuff. So here's an example of a mechanical thing I love. Speaking of donkeys, right? In Old School Essentials, I think it's griffins. Love horses, and mules, and like donkeys and mules and horses. They like to eat them. They're yummy. And it specifically says that now. And then giving a mechanic for that. That's the kind of thing I like. Okay. So being a little picky about that. So I'll move on. Part of it makes sense for the game. Part of it is like, I probably need this parsed out in the text to be more usable at the table in a different way. Just for me personally. Let's see here. I think I'm down. I don't know where I'm at. Let's see here. Oh yeah, indexes. Come on, RPG makers. Why you would not include an index anymore? That's what I'm talking about. Now this is love. Okay, what's the short one though? Tables index. Oh yeah, and then monster index is by HD. And then you encounter tables. That is good. I'm gonna look for a second thing, and I'm gonna go to the front to see this. Ooh, I like rules on rules and procedures about whether or not you can have a monster in the party. That's good. That's usable. It's not apparent to me. Oh yeah, there we go. Chapter 4, monster creation. Oh yeah. All right, let me find it so I can skip to it. I don't know how I missed it. Oh, well, maybe because so. Oh, chunky book. 387. Ah, yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Now, that is a monster manual. It walks you through step by step getting your monster made. And a giant table of body forms. Weight, category, square keep. The koala tour as an example. And, you know, see these things on an at 20 swallow attack. I don't know. That should have been in the text of those two. That's what I'm talking about, is having like interesting, flavorful mechanics for monsters. But yes. All right. So that's what and special disabilities. Oh man, that's what I'm talking about. Special abilities. A whole a big chapter on making monsters, and it looks perfect. It looks exactly what you need for making monsters. Oh man, that's great. And just a huge number of monsters. Okay. All right. This is probably what's going to see the most use from me. This judge's journal. I'll be reading this thing as time goes on. Regardless, this is a giant toolkit. I think when I looked at the PDF, also a real Dungeon Master's Guide. This is what the Dungeon Master's Guide should have been for modern D&D. So I doubt I'll find any surprises in here. Let me go back to that artwork though. Yeah, interesting. I don't know how I feel about the color artwork. I don't know. But it's just different than what I usually do. I love And so he has a video on this. It's not your job to make people have fun. And man, that is so true. I hate it when people say, well, the game master's job is to make people have fun. No, it's not. That's kind of disrespectful for your friends. I mean, man, what a codependent, unhealthy relationship. Who shows up to the movies or to a ball game and says, it is my job today to make sure everyone here is having fun? Who even hosts, like maybe if you're a host of a party, even then it seems kind of unhealthy. I mean, if you have a group of friends, isn't it everybody's job to make sure everybody's having fun? Like, or isn't everybody kind of on equal footing there? I've always felt that way. I think that the modern concept of the Dungeon Master is really an unhealthy relationship. It invests so much power in one person to where there's a hierarchy, and people will even say DM like like you're in the military or something. It's creepy and weird to me. I'm glad to have moved on from that. The game master, of course, is hosting, does have a lot of responsibility, probably is more invested in the game than the players, to be honest. But I certainly like games where the participants are more on equal footing and have equal investment. If the bar is that one person is the person responsible for everyone having fun, the participants maybe don't feel like that's their responsibility. That's to say that it's the DM's job to make everyone have fun is just not healthy to me. There's a lot of this kind of stuff. The judge is God, but he plays Satan, an adversarial action. This is something as time goes on, I've really come to understand that you can't have a meaningful game with what I've come to call without what I've come to call agon, the Greek concept in a game of arena, of having something at stake, something that can be lost, something where you can win or lose, and a challenge. So the judge being Satan, but also indifferent to outcomes is a foundation for an adventure campaign for people to actually be able to really make choices. I think I've went through some of this before. This is really interesting. I'm not going to delve into it. It has a whole thing on fudging. And it actually suggests there are some edge cases where you can look at it and you'll be like, and I would actually say it's not fudging. If you can look at something and you can say there's absolutely no meaningful outcome here for them to roll those dice and use that procedure, I don't think it's fudging to skip that. I think that's just good common sense on the part of a judge. But that's kind of getting into semantics. But I do agree with it, though. Most of the time you shouldn't, though. Most of the time you should do the procedure by the book. Tons of advice. These monster encounters by terrain. Like I said, this is almost like an interesting, almost successor to the 1E DMG. I can't give much higher praise than that. It's except that it's much better laid out, much more readable, much more usable at the table. It's not opaque. It's very easy to use but comprehensive and thorough. A massive toolkit, a huge section on treasure. I'm going to kind of skip ahead here. Look at this huge section on settlements and building settlements by people. So it has classes based on that. I think that actually drives the types of markets, which drives the type of people that show up. This is we're I got a slight spoiler here, but we're about to get into a big late 60s style, Tony Bath style war game campaign. That's one of our big projects on the channel that's coming up. And you can see the love of, I don't know that I want to call it realism, The author of this calls it the noetic appreciation of verisimilitude, but it is the love of fiction and of the real. And so Tony Bath in particular, you see in his rules, he'll start with the size of a place that will produce a certain amount of money, and that will produce the amount of levies and the amount of military personnel that can be produced annually. And out of this will naturally arise a world of drama. And this takes that and it goes a little deeper, but it is also very usable. And I wouldn't even actually say really complex. It's very eminently usable at the table. So it's just clear that this is meant to carry a really serious, well-made, thorough world with invested participants for a really long time. And I'm really excited about that kind of concept. I've already skipped whole chunks of pages here on non-player characters. So there's a giant section here on non-player characters. Abstraction. I used this recently to abstract, okay, I need somebody to go in a dungeon, but it's not the characters, and I need the result, and I need it to be fair. There's like a whole mechanic on doing that. Giant section on customizing different aspects of the game, including building your own custom classes. That's really cool. You don't see that in many role-playing games. Like, here's the tools to make the game you want. Like most of them, I get the impression is like, no, you need to buy from us. We're going to come out with a supplement for that. All right. We're coming to the end. I'll also note, like, this cool art. It's almost like, it sort of reminds me of a scene like from 300. Economics. This book, The Judge's Journal, huge tome of advice and tools, is 484 pages. Massive. Yeah. Adventure Conqueror King 2, aka Adventure Conqueror King Imperial Imprint edition. Absolutely beautiful faux leather binding. I got it with this wood slipcase for them to come in. Let's give it a try. Let's see if it works. Man, easily this is going to be the... okay, well, it's kind of tight there. There we go. It slid in, all right. Easily, this is going to be the most beautiful role-playing game product on my shelf. It's just gonna be gorgeous, and I'm gonna use the Judges Guild, or not Judges Guild. Hey, it does actually feel like the Judges Guild is a bit of an inspiration here, but I'm gonna use the Judges Journal. That's going to be a really useful index and. Thinking of Ozark here, a reference system for me of tables and ideas and things like that. And then I could really see myself getting excited about a ambitious, long-term, invested campaign with people who are like, we want to get in deep. And then the campaign is going to grow laterally into the world, not vertically beyond the world, where you're going to hop into other planes and planets and places. No, we're going to take over the world. We're going to care about the details of the world, and out of those details will arise this beautiful realism. That's what I could imagine this being used for. So, anyways, that's it. Adventure Conqueror King 2. I will include a link in the description, both to the Arbiter of Worlds playlist from Autark, from Alex McCrease. I'll also include a link for Acts 2. Thanks for joining me.
Mythic Mountains RPG is a private online play club that focuses on folk RPGs. Folk RPGs are the games that belong to all of us. They're what actually happens at a table between friends. It's their voice that has the authority on what is fun and what works for them. Weekly, we upload our games to allow others to sit in with us. The channel isn't monetized. We don't own the artwork, music, software, or games shown in these actual plays, and you can find links to their authors in the description. Like, subscribe, and share if you wish, or don't. Just like games in person, you're welcome to pull up a chair, sit in, and watch some of our games. No performances, no fancy equipment, just regular people playing folk pencil and paper role-playing games and having a good time. We hope these games will prove a source of enjoyment to anyone just wanting to listen in, anyone looking for examples of how actual groups run and play folk RPGs, and most importantly, if you haven't found your group yet, you're welcome here at ours.